The college football season is back. Hello, friends, and welcome in for another season of This Week in CAA Football presented by Geico. I'm Bobby Broyles, joined by my colleague, the one and only Tim McDonnell. Unfortunately, Tim, we thought we were going to have a game in the books to talk about already, but the Richmond and Sam Houston State contest has been pushed back because of Hurricane Harvey.
First of all, I'm glad to be back with you again, and I love the glasses starting off the new year fresh.
Yeah.
Like, right call by both teams, though. I think you moved to Waco, rescheduling for this Friday at Baylor University. That is a phenomenal stadium, McLean Stadium. An amazing effort from both programs to get this game to still happen. And Baylor, also, which plays on Saturday versus Liberty, hats off to Baylor as well for allowing this game to happen. We're going to break into the details for this game a little bit later, but obviously we want to respect those affected by the flooding, and our thoughts are with the people in Southeast Texas.
Indeed. And as we turn our attention to Week 1, Tim, 11 games on the docket, with 6 of those contests against FBS opponents on national television, 4 against FCS foes. We got one big-time conference throwdown to start the season as well.
How do you not start with that? I mean, New Hampshire versus Maine, we can begin. You know, I'm just licking my fingers up here. But New Hampshire versus Maine at Wildcat Stadium kicks things off in the limelight. Again, plenty to talk about for this one. A lot of keys, a lot of things to think about and to move forward, but that'll come up a little bit later as well. 6 games across the board on ESPN3 and Watch ESPN app. That means you can grab an opportunity for a signature win, not just a signature win for the playoffs, but on a national stage as well. You get those eyes, especially in social media today. You beat someone big, people are going to know. Last year, CAA Football had 2 FBS wins. Of course, Richmond and Albany were those 2 programs to pick up FBS wins. 2-11 versus FBS teams last year, but you look at the larger picture. We'll get into it, but 2 games versus the MAC, 2 games versus the American, 1 versus the ACC, 1 versus Conference USA. And the favorite part for me, and I know sometimes for you too, because we text, watch all the time this opening weekend, anything can happen, and anything will happen simply because everybody involved is trying to start fresh. Everyone's thinking about starting over and keeping those emotions calm, but you know, every time you see a crazy upset or you see a team that you don't expect to do anything, something crazy is going to happen. I think this conference got back some attitude in non-conference play, specifically in non-conference play for the better a year ago. 24-7 versus the FCS competition, led the entire FCS. I know we've harped it, but I'll never stop saying that. I love it.
You have to.
Up the ante again this fall. I think the expectation has been raised even further, which is great. That's a good thing. Last but not least, though, you have 2 enormous top 25 FCS matchups featuring opponents that both made the field of 24 in 2016. So for those other conference and the other beat writers, I've seen it. I see you talking about CAA football and the scheduling. Look at those 2 games right there. Richmond at Sam Houston State. That's a top 5 game, a nice little matchup, obviously. Nova at Lehigh, that's not too shabby either to open up a new season. Again, kudos to both of those teams. Not just FBS, not just worrying about who they should play, but 2 teams that both made the playoffs, and you're squaring off to open the year. What else can you ask for?
Well, Tim, let's get to your favorite part of the show. Let's break down the matchups, beginning with the CAA Football Game of the Week on College Sports Live, Thursday night at 7 o'clock, with Maine and New Hampshire battling out for the Bryce Cowell Musket.
I'm sorry, did you say they're playing for the Bryce Cowell Musket?
Yes, they are, in August.
Might have heard that, right? It is August, but we've talked about the intrigue, we've looked at the implications, and now, plain and simple, one team gets to take home the Musket in Week 1. Oh, and by the way, pick up a huge conference win. I think people are forgetting that. It's a conference. This is a conference game. That means a lot going forward. In a series that started in 1903 and embraces pride and ownership, making the switch from ending the year to now starting the year takes all that energy up another level. UNH right now owns 7 straight wins over Maine in the series. Remember last year, when it was a win-or-go-home situation, both teams entered with 6-4 records, probably, as it proved, the team that won was going to go to the playoffs. A field goal by Morgan Ellman with 7 seconds left sealed the 24-21 win in Orono for New Hampshire. Maine hasn't won in Durham since 2001. At the same time, handing the reins over to redshirt freshman Chris Ferguson. He was named the starter at QB, and this will be his first start in college. Not a big deal playing for the Musket, but his first college start, and he's going to need to get things rolling early and often. The road after the Thursday night throwdown, as the people at New Hampshire and Maine are now suddenly calling this contest, it doesn't get easier for Maine. 3 of the next 4 are on the road, at JMU, at UCF, and at Villanova. But the focus, at least right now, the focus at the end of camp and the focus leading up to this game has been on the Wildcats and getting the Musket back and returning it. That's it. According to what we've heard so far from the Maine players, everyone is not looking ahead and not worrying at all about the schedule that we know how daunting it is. But for New Hampshire, playing at home with what could be an amazing crowd, not just for the alums, but for New England football, for the students, watch for the run game success. I think that's a huge key in this one. The defense brings back plenty of guys asked to play early a year ago. All those guys are experienced. coming back. Trevor Knight is also back, obviously looking to progress. We know about that storyline. We've talked about it.
Yep.
But the run game, I think that's huge. Needs to rely right now on Donald Goodrich, Evan Gray, and Jerickson Fedrick. And Fedrick, by the way, is a Maine transfer. Even though all of those guys have never been the starter in their career, that's going to be huge. How will they handle the load, and how are they all of a sudden going to handle the attention if they do get to take that spotlight? I think the emotions and energy of the rivalry will show throughout the game. It's not going to be, maybe it'll be closer. I think it's going to be a really good game no matter what. But knowing and understanding what's at stake, I think that's the team that keeps its composure in game one and limits those classic early season mistakes, those penalties that are costly. All those mistakes, I think that's going to be the team with the advantage, obviously, and the musket at the end of Thursday night. If there are any teams in the league this year and year in and year out that need inspiration, that need to find a chip on its shoulder, it's every year it's these two teams.
Yes.
Buckle up, find a cozy spot. That's the best advice I can say. We've talked about it enough, but watch this game of the week, again, for free because it is the game of the week on collegesportslive.com and the College Sports Live app.
Well, also at 7, Tim, on Thursday night, Delaware stays home versus in-state rival Delaware State in the Route 1 rivalry in Danny Rocco's first game as the Blue Hens leader.
I know. I feel like we've done this because, you know what? They played this game last year.
Yes, they did.
They played it many times, but Thursday night lights to welcome in the new era at UD. And so much excitement with 19 starters back, so much unknown in possible changes of the offense. And we could see those changes right away versus Delaware State. Danny Rocco is now the third head coach since 2002 for Delaware. And Delaware's 7-0 all-time in the series versus the Hornets, including a 56-14 opening win last year. Right now, Joe Walker is believed to be the starter at quarterback. Also recently been named a team captain, which already shows you what he's done and how he's proved himself under his new coach. Walker has a chance right now to turn those things around on offense, especially for his career, because it hasn't been a huge struggle, but it has been a little bit obvious that this passing offense right now, last in the league last year with less than 100 yards through the air. Joe Walker alone has gone 8-12 in 20 games as the starter. He, again, I think is going to have to lean on the balance of running backs Kareem Williams and Thomas Jefferson to smooth things out and say, give them the ball, let them take care of things on offense, and then you can worry about the passing game.
Yep.
Charles Bell, Troy Reeder, Belai Nichols will all have the defense ready to go. I think really we'll have them ready to go and prove things out of the gates that not only do we have a new head coach, but we still have the same defense and we still want to prove a lot of things. The Hornets went winless in 2016 and that last win, in fact, came at the end of 2015. We can expect an even greater atmosphere, I think, in Newark on Thursday. That should make the opener in this new era of Danny Rocco football even sweeter.
A new era at 7 o'clock on Thursday night as well. Kurt Cignetti leads the Phoenix for the first time as they take on Toledo on ESPN3.
First ever meeting for the Phoenix and the Rockets playing in the Glass Bowl, and actually Elon's first trip to Ohio since 2001. That trip in 2001, obviously a long time ago, played Youngstown State. MAC teams in state football have squared off plenty of times before, especially Toledo. We've seen that with Towson. We've seen it in New Hampshire. We've seen it with Maine last year. And it has not been easy to sneak up for state football teams and get the upset. It's always tough when you look ahead. You know, CAA teams don't generally go play an SEC team. When you look at a MAC team, you think of teams that are ready to play state football teams, which isn't good for us. 9 games all time at the Division I level against FBS foes and still looking for a victory is Elon. Coach Cignetti embarks on his first game as a head coach for the Phoenix, a very tough task and not an easy one to open up with. Toledo, a team that went 9-4 a year ago and was picked to win the MAC in 2017. Quarterback Logan Woodside is pretty legit for a non-Power 5 guy. Expecting offensive changes right now for Elon under Kurt Cignetti, and it's hard to gauge how different things will be because of the quality of opponent, especially in the opener. You don't have time to adjust. We know the depth chart is going to be different. At least we know that right off the bat as well. Freshman quarterbacks Davis Cheek and Jalen Green right now are listed as the 2 starters, but both could see action in their first college appearances. If I'm me and I'm a freshman quarterback starting an FBS game, no better way to jump in the fire if you ask me.
Yeah, absolutely. Wrapping up Thursday night at 7 with Rhode Island traveling to Central Michigan, another MAC opponent here. Tim, you can see this one on ESPN3 as well.
And another, again, we're going to go through the quarterbacks because this is when time comes. The depth charts get released, but Rhodey named Tyler Harris starter at quarterback, and we talked about it in the preview series, but he's a transfer from UCF. This summer came in, so hasn't been around the program that long, but obviously made impressions in camp. Jajuan Lawson, transfer from New Mexico, is also expected to get some snaps and also expected to play in this one. Central Michigan plans to play 2 new starters at quarterback, which is good news. And another shakeup in this game because both teams have some unknowns on offense. Rhodey, all-time 0-14 in the FBS games. Most recent MAC foe was Bowling Green in 2012, and the Rams actually haven't won a season opener since 2009. Trying to find some momentum from the end of 2016, how they played down the stretch through fall camp with the new pieces on offense, especially such an important position at quarterback. I think the unknown's a little bit exciting too, because we really have no clue what to expect. None of these guys have we seen snaps for Rhodey. Harold Cooper is going to be asked to do it all, and then some. What else is new, though?
Yeah,
I mean, same thing every week for this guy. Third in kick return average a year ago in the CAA with 25.3 yards per return. Also sits right now 9th place on the all-time career all-purpose yards mark at Rhode Island with over 3,000. CMU went 6-7 a year ago and reached a bowl game and another difficult FBS foe that has experience taking care of FCS teams. If you're Rhodey, that's a tough start.
We moved to Friday night for the anticipated matchup between number 3 Sam Houston State versus number 7 Richmond from Waco, Texas at 7 o'clock. Obviously, a lot of storylines going into this one, Tim.
I don't know where you begin, but I know we talked about it a week ago, thinking about they're going to start the college football. The mentality of this game has just completely changed, but what an opportunity still for this conference, for this program, the conference in general, a statement game right out of the gates and a very rare shot to earn a significant win versus 2 worthy opponents. Not just a quality opponent, a team that's going to be pretty good. Top 5 opponents. This is a primetime matchup. But during the previews for the Spiders, we talked about the headlines for this one, but we have to look at them again. And both teams right now advanced to the quarterfinals last season after both reached the semifinals in 2015. The first ever meeting between the two programs, but that's not all that meets the eye. And we've talked about it before, but Sam Houston's Casey Keeler coached 11 seasons at Delaware, going 5-6 against Richmond. I guess you take that with a grain of salt. That's right. That's a good thing. And Russ Huesman, of course, the new head coach, had 7 assistants come over from Chattanooga, and his Chattanooga team at the end of last year met Sam Houston State in the playoffs, walked off that field in defeat, and little did he know that they would face Sam Houston leading another team almost a year later. Sam Houston State went 12-1 last year with that lone loss, coming in the quarterfinals at James Madison in the playoffs, 65-7. We all remember that one, the second largest margin of victory in FCS playoff history. And Sam Houston State, if you're Richmond, you have to stop the air attack. Last year, led the FCS 49.5 points per game. Jeremiah Briscoe, Walter Payton Award winner, he's back. 8 starters join him on offense, ironically led now by former New Hampshire offensive coordinator Tim Cramsey, I should say, just to add another twist. I think JMU did it, and it was the blueprint that no one else could figure out, and they did it last year in the playoffs. You have to make Jeremiah Briscoe uncomfortable and uneasy. That's the question. Jedediah Lewis, Davion Davis, and Nathan Stewart, all back at receiver, all had 184 catches combined and over 3,000 yards and 36 touchdowns just between them. They're all back. You have to make the Sam Houston State offense uncomfortable, whether it's forcing him in. At the end of the day, for me, when looking at this Richmond game and you think about the keys to Richmond, it's Kyle Aletta, for me, handling the offense, handling the way that this team moves. If the offense can pick up right where it left off and get back into the flow of things, we know Aletta was still getting back from the injury last year. We know it wasn't exactly game time, but when he gets back into the spotlight, if he can lead this offense, that's going to be huge. Obviously, emotions are going to be at an all-time high.
Yes, they
While
are.
Letta's back and healthy, leading the offense, Sam Houston State has all these expectations about how they ended the playoffs. To me, it's a game, whatever team stops themselves from making those boneheaded or little mistakes, especially penalties, that's going to be huge. But I really want to see the game flow of the Richmond offense if they get back to things normal with a healthy Kyle Aletta under center.
6 more games slated for Saturday. We begin at 12:30 with another top 25 matchup as Villanova hits the road against Lehigh out of the Patriot League. Big early test here, Tim, for the Wildcats.
A little bit more than what people, I think, are leading up to this game and thinking, and not just a big test. This is, to me, like showing up to the start of your senior year, thinking you're going to breeze through, and then finding out you have to take a midterm exam on day 1.
Ouch.
And I know I'm talking up Lehigh, but forget about the pressures of replacing Andy Talley and looking ahead, too far ahead. I mean, you're going to face a team right now that is capable of pulling off an upset. We witnessed it with an offense. If the Wildcats are ready, now that's another question. If the Wildcats are ready and ready for the test, that sets up things very nicely moving forward. And Mark Ferrante, the new era begins with a Lehigh team that won the Patriot League following 9 straight wins in 2016. And Nova's defense, believe it or not, is going to be pushed through the air in this one. 2 1,000-yard receivers returned for Lehigh, including stud Troy Pelletier. Last year, the Cats fought back at home, if you remember that one. Had to come back in that one, 26-21 win on the main line versus Lehigh. Survived that one, but I think the physicality is going to take over for Villanova, especially leading the way for what should be a dangerous ground attack. We've talked a lot about the balance that Villanova needs, but Lehigh last year allowed over 200 yards per game on the ground and witnessed that in the playoffs, how much that hurt the Mountain Hawks to end 2016. Prime example was that New Hampshire game, how many rushing yards were given up. Out of all the games this weekend, this one, in my opinion, has a chance to be sneaky good. And it also, for me, directly relates to Zach Bednarczyk and his continued growth as the leader under center for Villanova. Anxious to see two things. Anxious to see a new-look Nova squad. Will things actually be different? And I'm anxious to see if last year's momentum directly follows the Wildcats.
At 3:30 on ESPN3, William & Mary tracks up 64 West to Charlottesville to take on UVA out of the ACC. These two teams have quite an interesting history, Tim.
They do, besides the little short drive over, but two long-standing programs and two long-standing traditional programs in the state of Virginia. UVA has won 8 of the last 9 in the series, with the Tribe losing by just 6 points in 2015. Really the start of Devontae Dedmon, Kaskin, and Cluley, really the start of that team turning the corner on offense. Last time the Tribe earned the upset, though, was in 2009. We all remember that one. If you've been following CAA football, you remember that one, of course. You see BW Webb, the pick, and you see all the things that the Cavs will be weary of and thinking about the Tribe, considering the loss to Richmond to open up 2016. I think that's a good and a bad thing for William & Mary's upset chances, because they know Richmond plays in the same conference as William & Mary. They know what teams are capable. But right now, the biggest question, we have no clue who the starting quarterback is. And in classic Jimmy Laycock fashion, we still don't know. And we probably won't know until the first snap. But Laycock did say, however, whoever is that guy, whoever gets the job, he's going to have to play well to keep his job. So by no means, whoever starts this game could see a couple of different guys. You never know. But you have to handle the role of the underdog if you are the Tribe. And UVA is coming off a 2-10 season. Hasn't won a season opener since 2013. The pressure's on them right now. If they're going to hear again the fan base of losing to an FCS team in CAA football for the second straight year.
In the state of Virginia.
How many grads are around this Richmond area, around the Charlottesville area? Never say never with a new quarterback, but you have to expect whoever's job it is, it's going to be easier, obviously, having top 4 receivers back for the Tribe from a year ago, especially knowing how well Devontae Dedmon, how well Andrew Kaskin played at Scott Stadium just 2 years ago in a near upset that the Tribe really were in that game throughout its entirety.
At 4 on ESPN3 and the Watch ESPN app, Stony Brook travels to South Florida to take on the Bulls out of the American.
Normally, you look at games against FBS opponents and you say, well, this is their opener, this is both teams' opener. It's a tough task. 9 starters back to headline a defense that is hard to prep for no matter what caliber of FBS team you play for. And I know we talk up Stony Brook's defense, but I believe that's true. They're really not going to know how good this defense is until after, I think, about the second quarter. South Florida already played last weekend, so I don't know if you take that as a disadvantage, a huge disadvantage, but one at San Jose State and Charlie Strong's opener as the head coach. Down 16-0 at one point. I guess that's a good thing going forward, but they did go on to win 42-22 and bring a victory home in Charlie Strong's opener. Hoping to see progression in the form of the passing game, and it's obvious, but it's specifically taking chances when it's available. I feel like sometimes the offense for Stony Brook knows when it can take chances, but also doesn't always take those opportunities, and especially as an FBS contest when there's nothing to lose. Win or lose, there is nothing to lose for Stony Brook. Stacey Bedell, he's supposed to be healthy. He's looked good in preseason camp. Got Timon Paris also leading the way up front. Can guess a lot of the runs are going to go right behind him, but it all starts and ends with the play of Joe Carbone under center, who right now it is him again this year. See that progression. USF is a team predicted by many to take home the American title and already shook off its first game cobwebs a week ago. So how much of that will actually play into Stony Brook that has not played yet? I really want to see if that will impact any part of the game, especially in the first half.
Later that evening at 6 p.m., it will be our first look at the defending national champs, JMU, as they play at East Carolina on ESPN3.
The Dukes and the fan base, a lot of people have been hearing about this one for a while, and about, more specifically, their chances in this one to pull off the upset. Rightfully so, after the year they had in 2016. Second in scoring, 5th in rushing. I mean, talk about a guy in Brian Shore who's back, but he's not only the best player, he is the best player back, but there's also 4 other guys, 4 total preseason All-Americans on both sides of the ball if you're James Madison. How do you handle the hype? How do you handle the pressure? The only true time that JMU was really put to the wall and really pressed up in 2016 was that FBS game at North Carolina. Its lone loss last year, in fact, and having an entire offseason to prepare, not only win the national championship, but to prepare and know that you're facing ECU only fuels that feeling. ECU went 3-9 a year ago and knows what it's facing in a defending national champion, which is rare in today's day and age in an FCS team to get this much respect going in. But a team that can match its athleticism across the board, I think that's fair to say. And the JMU faithful, will be in full force, no question. And this team has handled all the title talk and the title defense talk well leading into the fall. Hands down, one of the best pure, if we're talking about a game that's back and forth, that could be back and forth, FCS, FBS matchups, one of the best ones that many people, not just in the FCS, in the CAA, but a lot of people will have their antennas, ready to watch this one on Saturday.
Also at 6 on ESPN3, Albany will be on the road as the Great Danes square off with a familiar and former CAA football member, Old Dominion.
Old Dominion, yes.
You remember them?
Yeah. What a huge difference, I should say, a year makes for Albany in terms of not just playing an FBS team, but games that you've won. Now you've already woken up the Giant. You beat Buffalo, and can you call Buffalo a Giant? I think you can because they're an FBS team. Buffalo game is still holding out for the program because it set the tone the rest of 2016 for a new edge. Not saying it can't happen this time around, but ODU is certainly aware of that chance more now than ever, considering the Monarchs used to be in CAA football, aware of the capable teams in CAA football and the competition level of CAA football. A 10-3 record a year ago, the Bahama Bowl appearance, that's great, good for ODU, but I think this is a statement game for Albany as well. Have some health concerns for Elijah Ibitokin-Hanks. He's ready to go. Maybe. He has a tweaked knee. We know that. Yeah. Kind of a game-time decision right now. That's great if he can go, but no need to rush things right away if he's not 100%. You have a lot more football left this season, especially if it means keeping him healthy another week. The Danes still want to show people they are capable of finishing from last year, and this is their first chance to prove it against an old conference foe. Nothing better. No better perfect opportunity for just that.
And we wrap up week 1 at 6 with the battle for Baltimore as Towson plays host to Morgan State on ESPN3.
Interesting. Towson opening up at home for the first time what seems like a really long time. Morgan versus Morgan for me is Morgan Mahalik, of course, taking center stage as the Tigers' go-to starter under center. A huge opportunity, a huge spotlight for him. TU, meanwhile, also has that opportunity to get a fresh start at home. The Bears from Morgan State went 3-8 in 2016. Both sides have plenty of bragging rights in the state of Maryland. However you want to look at this game, a lot of players are from the state, and a lot of players have that passion for their home state. And we know how badly Towson would like to start fast and bounce back from a slow start in 2016 that ultimately hurt this team down the road. A little more energy, I thought, this offseason for the Tigers, in my opinion, whether it's hype, whether it's players, talking about the optimism. But in my opinion, it makes that one that much more vital to responding to the question marks from this team. Next week is at Maryland, but you better believe Coach Ambrose will not let his guys overlook Morgan State first.
CAsports.com/live scores is your source for live scoring and live stats throughout the first week of the college football season. And you can check in with us on Sunday as well with the Sunday Roundup on CAFootball.com.
And it would not be the first episode of a new year without me reminding you all, you can follow the league on our social media platforms, starting with Facebook.com/CAA Football and Twitter and Instagram. Just search CAA Football, use the hashtag CAAFB, and if you want to stay up to date throughout the weekend, you better believe we have you covered on social at all times.
Yep.
New year, new expectations, and it's been just another phenomenal time to be part of the best conference in FCS football. Ready for the season to start, ready for things to go, and I'll just leave it there for you.
No doubt, Tim. Good luck to all the CAA football teams this week. And what do I always say?
Enjoy the games, everyone.